We're going to start with Munster Exeter, which is at Thomond Park tomorrow at 5:30, lads. So get your thoughts on this one. Like Munster, looking at the pools, they're I think the lowest points total of any of the pool leaders. But at the same time, it seems to me, perfect conditions for a Munster team. It's winner takes all, obviously, against Exeter.
Yeah, well, they'll find out tonight whether the home quarter-final is on the card. So if Montpellier beat Edinburgh, I think that it opens up.
Right.
And I think that Montpellier team are more than capable of going to Edinburgh and winning. So they'll know what faces them. But I think it's going to be Edinburgh away in a quarter-final. And Murrayfield is hardly the most intimidating of away venues. So they play there all the time as well. So it's a fairly, as away quarterfinals go, I think they'd back themselves. So they were, they're for most of the 80 minutes, they were a better team in Exeter and probably left it behind them, but then got away with it in the last couple of minutes as well. It was a great game, but it was a strange game. O'Mahony's, presuming he's out, O'Mahony would be a big loss. And I think that's been downplayed a bit this week, which is strange. It's only when they get out there they'll realise what they're missing with him, because he's been in sensational form. But if Cloudé comes, I presume they won't pick Cloudé because they need a line-out option. So it'd probably maybe Wycherley Wycherley, who was outstanding against Leinster. So there's a couple of variables in it, but if they're anywhere near as good as they were last week, I think they'll get the job done at home. And if Edinburgh do if Edinburgh do win tonight and the home quarter-final is off the table regardless, they only need a losing bonus and stop Exeter getting 4 tries to get through. I can't see Exeter getting the 4-0 split or the 5-1 split that they need. They might get a win, but I just don't see them getting enough.
Quinny, what are you thinking?
It's going to be tricky, I think, but Exeter have been poor in this competition. The loss away, I think they got a bit shell-shocked maybe by the intensity Munster brought in round 1. And, sometimes they talk about the Premiership being the best league in the world. It's a very intense league, there's no doubt about that, but sometimes I don't know if the quality is there.
They are the current league leaders, 4 points.
Yeah, Exeter and Saracens have kind of bucked the trend, haven't they? They've been the ones who've consistently been good, but Exeter, they've been Europe 5 times since they got promoted, and they haven't won a knockout game. They haven't got into they've got to the quarterfinals once, and they were beaten. They fluked into it about 2 years ago on 16 points at the end. So they've been disappointing. I think they see this as one that I sense this is a kind of a throw the kitchen sink at it and hope for the best. And we're not expected to win. And that makes them quite dangerous because they're a quality side and they've won on the road a lot in the Premiership in the last number of years. So Thomond Park is not just going to win this game for Munster. They've got to play well. I think they're in good form. They're full of confidence. The last couple of weeks have been brilliant for them. The way Carberry responded after Cass and the way he's played, the way he makes him tick. Having Chris Farrell back is important. Tommy O'Donnell has been really important for him. He was really good last week again. Byrne and Clyne in the second row have been arguably the form second row partnership in last weekend. They were brilliant. Yeah. And I think they offer him that real kind of balance as a second row. Byrne has just been sensational, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. No, his post stretch just makes such a difference to them. I hope they keep their foot in the pedal. Yeah, because they during the early stages.
Rory, the only issue is themselves here tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely, because they went out and that performance in Exeter was excellent, and the following week they weren't great against Gloucester. Cast at home didn't actually at home they haven't been fantastic in Europe this year, whereas their away form's got more headlines. So you just. They were good against Connacht. They were brilliant against Gloucester. You just hope they can sustain that and then, break for the internationals on a high.
You just think if they'd won that game in Cass, we spoke about the injustices that happened, but also their own management and their own performance. They could be looking at being seeded 1 or 2 tomorrow. Yeah,
just on the
and that would actually give you a home semi-final this year. Yeah. So it's that Cass game, and I know I'll keep going back to it. Could be it's done now, but it could be very costly.
So is the game in Sandy Park. Just on the Tyburn case, and you mentioned the line out there as well. Keane Tracy writing in your paper this morning that if the Six Nations had started last week, we would have been, from an Irish perspective, we would have been missing our 2 main line out callers in Devon Toner and Ian Henderson. How important is it from a provincial perspective that James Ryan has started calling line outs for Leinster and Tyburn is getting involved in a similar area from a Munster perspective?
It's important for any second row to be able to call line outs, in my opinion. I call a fair few lineouts when I played with Munster or Ireland over the years, and it frustrated me at times that you think, well, it's not my job to call the lineouts. I think having the ability to call the lineouts mean you understand the line-out really well. You understand, and you it takes a little bit of time for some guys.
Why were you calling them? If you were saying it wasn't your job to be doing it?
No, it was. I shared them at times with Paul. I would have called a lot of the short lineouts because we did 4-man lineouts with me standing at halfback, where I'd step in and out of the lineout. 5-man lineouts with me at halfback. 6-man lineouts with me at halfback. And Paul would manage to call the bigger ones, you know, the full lineouts. And obviously he went on to be one of the best lineout callers and best tacticians in a lineout in world rugby. Himself and Matt Field are always spoken about how good they were. Ben Kay was a brilliant lineout forward for England and Leicester. Donnacha Ryan is someone who, I think I remember it was about 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when Paul got injured for the Scotland game in Dublin. I think he was 13. And he had to come in and call the lineout straight away. And it was real kind of baptism of fire, but he had learned a lot about the ability to do that. And like I say, when I go back to the original point, if you have the ability to call the lineout, it means you understand the lineout. And the more forwards you have, even props understanding the lineout, the better. So they can see a little bit of space themselves when they're that kind of keyed into where my man is going to probably call it. There's 2 spaces here, and you know, they're switched on a little bit. The old traditional way was, well, I'm a prop, I don't have a lot to do, or I just lift. And the guy at the tail of the line, the 7 had his hands and his hips. But that, you know, it's changed over the years. Everybody needs to be really clued in. So I think any second row that plays now at any level, you ideally, some of them do it naturally and others, they want to boss the line out.
Yeah.
It's part of their role to make them tick, and they believe it can be one here, there and everywhere. But every second row nowadays, in my opinion, should have that ability. Because if one guy goes off, he can take over. And like Devin Toner was someone who was quiet when he kind of started playing with Leinster and Ireland, and he played a good bit with Paul as well, and Paul would have still called the lineouts. But he's someone now who has run the Leinster lineout superbly, and the Irish lineout as well. Henderson started doing it at the Lions tour. Does it for Ulster now as well. So the more guys you can get having that ability, so it's not just about being the dominant one, it means everybody understands. So the more guys, back rows as well, who have that ability to be able to say, you know, I'm going to call a few lineouts if need be.
The other technical area that's kind of touched on in the papers this morning, and I know you were at the press conference, Rúaidhrí, is Josh van der Fleer's quotes, and I guess we can start talking about Leinster now. What was he saying exactly about not getting carried away with the idea of becoming David Pocock?
He was, yeah, I think the major thing that he had to work on was getting in over the ball. I think that's what Levy and O'Brien have over him. He's probably the best tackler of the 3, and he's a very good carrier as well. I love the way he accelerates into contact, but he probably isn't as good over the ball. He's not as strong over the ball. Like Levy's, incredible at it, but it probably gets him injured as well. So he was talking about how he was trying to get better in that area, and Lancaster took him aside and said, look, you can't go chasing this. You got to identify the time. So, Pocock is just a natural. He gets in over the ball. It's what he does. It's his role. But Van der Fleer has about 10 roles to do in the Leinster setup in the Ireland team. So it's just don't go into every breakdown because we need you in the defensive line. So he's trying to learn to identify the ones that he should go into. And I think that's a skill that players probably get from experience as well. So he's getting better at it. I still don't think he's at the level of the others, but he brings so much to the table in other departments. But I guess when you're, like, they can only take 5 back rows to the World Cup. If O'Brien, Van der Fleer and Levy are fit, I think Van der Fleer misses out personally. So he's trying to get himself better in that department so that he's giving himself as good a chance to go to that World Cup as possible. And he's becoming harder and harder to leave out. Right now, I'd say he's going to start 7 against England because he's the man in position and he's fit and firing. O'Brien might come back in tomorrow's game, but I'd say probably on the bench if he does. So he was just talking about basically upskilling and trying to get better, but doing it smartly.
One of the other sort of lines that was coming out of that press conference yesterday was John Fogarty talking at length about the sort of coldness of Leo Cullen's selection, and with Jack McGrath particularly missing out in the matchday squad, I think entirely last week. I mean, it struck me actually that Fogarty talks about what an amazing reaction McGrath had to it, and he was brilliant about the place and he was cajoling everybody else and helping them along the way. But at the same time, like, if you're Jack McGrath and you've missed out in the squad entirely, given from the heights that he's come from, it might be the sort of day or the sort of week that you're thinking, actually, my future belongs somewhere else.
It was a big call. I think it caught everyone by surprise a little bit. But I think the story we were hearing is Ed Byrne was flying it in training. And sometimes, we all buy into reputations, say, well, he's such and such an international, he starts normally, and then someone jumps out of nowhere. So Ed Byrne is not going to sit back and say, well, I'm happy to be behind Cian Healy and Jack McGrath. he's obviously thrown down the gauntlet and he's caught Leo Cullen's eye in some way, and maybe he felt that, you know, it was a little bit of a shake-up for Jack McGrath that would kind of drive him on to get his standards high. Maybe again, if they had dropped, it's all speculation. You think a year and a half ago I felt he should have been starting for the Lions, and he came off the bench in the 3 tests and he was brilliant. And
there was nothing between himself and Healy.
Very little, yeah. And Vunapolo, even who was the man in possession of the Lions jersey, you know, there was an argument to start Jack ahead of him in the 3rd test anyway, definitely. Yeah. But he's a great player, and I think it's good to hear that the response there was one of anger and frustration, which is natural for players when you lose out.
I think he's back. I think he's in the team for tomorrow.
Okay.
I think it was one of the things they took. I think he's starting. I think.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of that smart management. Take him out and then put him in. And
Jesus.
but I believe after the 2016 Pro 14 final defeat, they had a big, you know, soul searching kind of. You know, it was a terrible season. Leo Cullen and his management team. One of the things they said was, if the young guys are going well, we're not putting guys in based on the caps that they've won, because it's not. We need to get reward for them. I think the final, I think the couple of players were picked who probably weren't fit or firing ahead of players who've been going better. And the following season, Rob Kearney was picked on the bench away to Cast. I can't remember who they picked ahead of him, but Nasiwa started with O'Loughlin and Byrne, who were very new on the wings. And that was a kick in the backside for Rob Kearney. And he's the starting number 15 again. But it's just one of those things that you've got to be a bit more... they've decided to be more ruthless and to reward form, and it's paid dividends for them, because whenever they go with the young guys, it works.
They need just a draw to top the pool. You're heading over to that game, I think?
Yeah, I'm doing the Ulster game on Saturday and the Wasps game on Sunday. I just can't see any reason why Wasps would beat them. Like, Wasps are so way out. They're just way out of the running. They had a week of losing players, signing players. They just seem to be all at sea. So they'll probably put up to them for 40 minutes. But even if they get O'Brien, Henshaw, Kearney back on deck this week as well. Toner should be back. I mean,
they'll want to play with the game in 2 weeks.
So
I think
they'll Portugal next week, so they want to play.
Yeah, they seem to have come through that little bit of a blip potentially as well in good fettle. Ulster, obviously, Leicester on Saturday at 3:30, and a bonus point win here. Quinny takes all the guessing out of the equation from an Ulster point of view. Tough got though.
I just think a win will put them through. It'll definitely put them through in second place. They're on 18 points. If they get to 22, they're guaranteed to be in the last 8. I just don't know what's going to happen with Leicester. Do you?
There's more chance of a Leicester performance than a Wasp performance.
Absolutely, because of the tradition and maybe the anger and the frustration that's there. That their form has been terrible. I think they've lost 7 in the Premiership and just 1 in Europe. They've only 1 win in Europe, so I think it's to go to Scarlets last week and be beaten 33-10. They were 33-0 down at one stage. I think if I was a Leicester fan, I'd be really concerned with what's happening there at the moment. But they will probably throw out as best they can. Jordan Murphy will they need to get a win and get a bit of a feel-good.
They want a springboard into their next couple of weeks on there. I think Jordan Murphy will be targeting this as if you beat these lads, you can kind of go into.
I think it's a great chance for Ulster, isn't it? If they keep it together now, Cooney and Burns, they'll need them.
It's the kind of game they've lost in the past, in the last couple of years. It's kind of one where they slip up. They got a big win last week, and they kind of fell over the line a bit against Racing.
Their game management has been an issue for them. They started well in Racing and just lost control of the ball as well. And last week they nearly, the crowd got them over the line at the end, and a few mistakes from Racing, but. They've got to play well here. You'd think just go to Leicester now. They've only won 1 game. It's just a case of Ulster. They'll get the win, but it'll be different. I just sense you're right. It'll be different than Wasps. There'll be a real kind of anger and a pressure on the Leicester players to perform, and they'll make it tricky for Ulster. We'll chat next week, lads. See if you're right. Thanks, William. Enjoy the games over the weekend, Rory and Alan. So we've live commentary, by the way, of the Wasps Leinster game as well on Sunday. And in the commentary box there is going to be Conor Morris alongside Brendan Mackin and Jake Heenan. So do tune in for that.